Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel English Carnival, a journey of learning with joy. The channel is dedicated to English language, literature, criticism, academics, motivation and many more. Friends, today I have come up with a different, little bit interesting and thrilling topic or genre of literature which brings two different poles together, and that is science and literature, and the name of the topic is science fiction, an introduction or science fiction in brief. Friends, before we proceed, I request you to subscribe the channel, press the bell icon so that you may get notifications of the uploaded videos in coming days. Friends, here as far as our today's topic is concerned, that is science fiction, it's all about the society, science and technology. It has been frequently pointed out that science or science fiction is nothing but the literature of change or literature of ideas. We know very well that today the entire society or civilization has dynamically been undergoing with lot of changes. Science fiction or science and technology, rather I say, is one of the most important pillars in human life, which has brought radical changes in the society and other related branches of the society. In today's scenario, friends, we know very well science and technology is just like the gift for human being, or just like the gift for the society. Science and technology has given us so many things to make our life smoother, to make our life very sound or easy. And we people or human beings have been taking benefit of it definitely positively. But friends, as there are two shades, positive and negative, pros and cons, advantage and disadvantage, here also science fiction in certain scenario or the literature rightly shows us the way or the dark side of science and technology. And that's the reason, my friends, here we feel, or it seems, whether we people are being manipulated by science and technology or science and technology is being manipulated by us. So friends, this is the reason, and here we are going to explore the most interesting, thrilling but little bit neglected area of literature as far as Indian context is concerned, that is science fiction. So friends, without wasting time, let's move and see what exactly science fiction is. Friends, science fiction accommodates various themes and ideas which have very nicely applied and used in various science fiction stories and works by science fiction writers. It should be noted and accepted and understood as well that science fiction is a movement strictly pertained to the speculations, predictions and guesses about the development in science and technology and the impact or effect of such development or advancement or progress upon human beings or on society and the civilization at large. Friends, at surface also one may feel, or we also may think, or we might be thinking that science and literature are two different poles and they are very far from each other. But when we read or understand Ratnakar Belkar's quotation or statement where he argues that science concerns with facts, reasons, causes and effects, and literature too deals with facts, but in it facts are presented in modified forms. Friends, it means literature modifies the existing facts to create something new and sensational for its readers and society, and these kinds of modified facts, if I'm not wrong, deserve to be called as the fantasy. So friends, after having seen this brief introduction about science fiction or science fiction and literature or literature and science, let's see the origin of science fiction or this term science fiction. Friends, there is a great agitation and debate as far as the birth or beginning of science fiction is concerned, and it seems so because science fiction itself is a very broad and diverse field. Some literary figures, writers, critics rightly state that it is one of the oldest genres of literature, and there are many archaeological elements from which one may have the entry points to understand the birth of science fiction. Friends, according to some writers, literary figures, and critics, the Epic of Gilgamesh, Arabian Nights, or the Tale of the Bamboo Cutters, these are the science fiction works from which one needs to understand it as the origin or beginning of science fiction, where in certain scenario or in Indian context, the epics called the Ramayana and the Mahabharata also deserve to be called as the beginning of science fiction. Friends, here we have one more example of Kepler and his book called The Man in the Moon. This is the first book about the journey to the moon, and it also deserves to be called as the beginning or the origin of science fiction. Whereas some rightly say Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, one of the well-known and thrilling works of Mary Shelley's, it also deserves to be called as the beginning or origin of science fiction. Friends, when we think about its definition or certain other parts, like the issues and themes which have been incorporated in these science fiction works, so here we need to understand the term romantic, which is known for the application of supernatural and fantastic elements in literature. So friends, here besides this word romantic or a scientific romance or romantic science fiction or romantic scientific literature, there were some other names as well, like off-trial stories, impossible stories, scientific stories, different stories, and all these were the names for this kind of literature, to which now we call as science fiction literature. But friends, until 1929, the word or phrase scientific romances was there, and it continued until 1929. But friends, in 1929, this term called scientific fiction, which was used by Hugo Gernsback, and from that period the word or phrase science fiction came into existence, and it might be the reason Jules Verne, the French science fiction writer, or Hugo Gernsback, H.G. Wells are popularly known or called as the father of science fiction. Now friends, by taking into account or consideration all these things about science fiction literature, let's see certain definitions of science fiction. So at first friends, we have Frederick Frohl, where he says science fiction is a characteristic way of thinking about the things. So friends, science fiction is a kind of literature which gives us a typical way of thinking or which develops within us a typical skill of thinking about the things we have. Next we have Einstein's quote as imagination is more important than knowledge. So friends, deliberately I have incorporated this quote by Einstein, and the reason behind putting this quotation before you is that science fiction is based on imagination. It talks about the present and future and past as well. But when it talks about the future society, future generations, or coming scenario or coming phases of life, it has the touch of imagination in bracket fantasy. And the way it represents all these things or imaginary or fantastic things slash plausible things or in bracket plausible things, cause number of things are there which had been written, predicted by sci-fi writers or science fiction writers, which have been come into existence later on, and we people or today's generation have been enjoying, experiencing all those things. And that's the reason this quote quoted by Einstein suits to today's scenario. The next definition we have Isaac Asimov, where he says modern science fiction is the only form of literature that constantly considers the nature of the changes that face us, the possible consequences, and the possible solutions. Friends, the next definition rightly proves the quote of Einstein, where Ray Bradbury, an American science fiction writer, rightly states science fiction is really sociological studies of the future, things that the writer believes are going to happen by putting two and two together. So here also we need to understand, or in coming slides we are going to study the types of science fiction or different categories, in which we have social science fiction category as well. So here friends, science fiction writers rightly talk about the future and coming scenario or coming things, and all those things are plausible up to certain extent. The next definition we have, that is pointed out by Gene Wolfe, where it has been stated as all a matter of plausibility that just I have talked about. Do people think the future might be like this? If so, it's science fiction. If they think this could never happen, that's fantasy. So friends, if in science fiction literature the things are there or which have been presented in plausible manner, then those things are supposed to occur in coming generations or in coming phases of life. If it is not, then some people rightly call it as the fantasy. And this is what Gene Wolfe rightly points out here. Friends, after having seen some definitions of science fiction, we are supposed to explore certain types, divisions of science fiction, and it has been made for the sake of understanding, for the sake of convenience. So friends, here at first we have hard science fiction, then soft science fiction, social science fiction, and military science fiction. Besides these four categories or divisions, we have some other themes, issues, and ideas which have rightly been incorporated in science fiction literature by science fiction writers. But here we have categorized this stream into four different parts, in which at first we have hard science fiction. So friends, the term hard science fiction was coined by P.S. Miller in 1975. His intention behind originating the term was to classify the science fiction novels which were dealing with purely scientific issues and related concepts. But there were some science fiction dealing with speculations, scientific fantasies, and many more issues adopted from the authentic scientific concepts. So the term played very vital and significant role in segregating or in differentiating these kinds of differences, and for that reason, friends, this is one of the crucial and important subgenre of science fiction which looks for the natural scientific spirit rather than the supernatural one. As an example of this hard science fiction, we can mention rightly over here the streams of physics, chemistry, electronics, biology, and the renowned work of Harry Clement Stubbs, The Missions of Gravity, which was published in 1954. Friends, after this we have soft science fiction, and it is used to it is used to depict the use of sciences like psychology and sociology. And in these kinds of soft science fiction, the focus is given rightly on characterization rather than the scientific things or the concepts or jargons or inventions. This soft science fiction rightly helps us to understand the social plight and related elements rather than the scientific progress or scientific advancement. So here also, friends, for an example, we have Alfred Bester's The Demolished Man, which was published in 1953. Then Philip K. Dick, Ballard, Michael Bishop's are other well-known soft science fiction writers. And all these writers have given an appropriate place to this soft science fiction literature in the stream of world literature. After this, friends, we have the most important part, and that is social science fiction. So here, friends, as far as social science fiction is concerned, it rightly deals with the sociological aspects rather than technological ones. It concentrates more on human behavior and their overall lifestyle in the society or in the social structure. Friends, in these kinds of social science fiction, the future societies are emphasized rightly and often criticized as well, usually for the purpose of pointing out certain aspects of the society from which some other aspects may come before the society or readers. But still, science and technology plays quite vital role in these kinds of social science fiction as well. Friends, we are very much familiar with the writers like H.G. Wells, George Orwell, Aldous Huxley, Isaac Asimov. All these writers are the part of this social science fiction literature. And all these writers, as just I have told you, have created a kind of impression in the world literature as far as science fiction is concerned. After this, the last category that we have made here is military science fiction, and it represents or talks about military forces in the context of conflicts, disputes, or war. Friends, here also we have certain examples like Peter F. Hamilton's Knights Down trilogy. Then we have H.G. Wells' well-known and renowned masterpiece, The War of the World, and these are the perfect example of military science fiction. Friends, after having seen its origin, certain definitions and different types, now we are expected to understand certain themes, ideas and issues, and all these threads can also be called as the subgenres of science fiction. So here at first we have the theme or idea, and that is time travel. Friends, as far as the theme or this idea or the aspect of time travel is concerned, it has been playing quite vital role in science fiction literature. And time travel is nothing but a kind of playing with the time, moving in past, moving in future. Friends, we are familiar with the masterpiece written by H.G. Wells, one of the well-known novella, that is The Time Machine, which was published in 1895. So here we have one more example explaining, defining or presenting the theme of time travel, and that is of Stephen Baxter's The Time Ship, which was published in 1995. Friends, we have another thread, that is the theme or the aspect or the idea of superhero. It has been observed that the evolution of human beings on the earth is one of the major themes in science fiction writings or literature. For here also we have the example H.G. Wells' The Food of the God, which was published in 1904, and then we have one more example of Basford's The Hamptonshire Wonder, which was published in 1911, and Alfred Bester,'s The Demolished Man, which was published in 1953. So friends, all these are the example dealing with the theme, and that is superhero. We have another aspect, and that is space opera. As far as space opera is concerned, friends, this is one of the oldest and well-known themes used in science fiction. George Lucas' Star Wars, an American space opera film series as well, is a pure space opera out of the golden age of science fiction of 1930s and 1940s. Here we have Edmund Hamilton's Landsman series, which was published in 1936, and this is the perfect example of space opera. Now the most interesting and crucial, or the crux of science fiction literature we can call, and it is robots or robotics. Friends, it is an excellent, thrilling, as just I have told you, an interesting subgenre, one of the interesting subgenres rather I say, of science fiction. And today, or today's generation, has been experiencing the significant role of this robots or robotics in today's scenario. Friends, as far as robots or robot science fiction works or robotics is concerned, it could be defined as these are such science fiction which contains the theme of robot or its laws of robotics, which had rightly been stated by Isaac Asimov. Here we have the nice example of it, as Asimov's few works are there, I, Robot and all. But before that, we need to understand that Karel Čapek's play, that is RUR, which was published in 1921, that Rossum's Universal Robots, and this is the perfect example of it. We have, as just I have told you, few examples of Isaac Asimov and his masterpieces like I, Robot, The Naked Sun, The Robots of Dawn, and Robots and Empire. So these are the well-known examples of this term robots or robot science fiction literature. Friends, we have another interesting term or theme or subgenre of science fiction, and that is cyborg. This term was coined by Manfred Clance in 1960, and lexically it can be defined as a person whose psychological functioning is aided or supported by or depend upon a mechanical or electronic device. Friends, on the other hand, it can also be defined as it is the concept of a man-machine combination in which a human who adds to or enhances his or her ability by using technology. And that's the reason, friends, this is also one of the most important subgenres of science fiction. Friends, we have one more such term, and that is cyberpunk. Friends, this term has been coined from the word cybernetics, and which is a science studying control and communication in the animal and the machine. Here, the word punk is nothing but an anarchistic dance and fast youth movement which terrorized the world in 1970s and early 1980s as well. We had some instances of it. Friends, basically this term was originated by Bruce Bethke as the title of his short story Cyberpunk, published in Amazing Science Fiction Stories magazine in 1983. As far as the definition of this term cyberpunk is concerned, friends, this term or subgenre of science fiction can rightly be defined as the struggle for the dominance between mankind and machine, and the way in which developing technology will come to influence our lives. Friends, we have the perfect example of cyberpunk in postmodern scenario, and that is William Gibson and his science fiction works. As at last, while mentioning or while putting some popular science fiction works, I have mentioned the work of William Gibson, and that is Neuromancer. So friends, after this, we have one more interesting theme or subgenre or widely discussed part of science fiction, and that is aliens or Martian. Friends, the aliens or Martians or extraterrestrials started to appear in the science fiction magazines and novels as soon as when it had been discovered or when the debate or the talk about the aliens or Martians had come into existence. We have some examples of this theme or defining or talking or discussing or focusing about or on the theme of aliens or Martian. We have The War of the Worlds, the masterpiece of H.G. Wells and Stanley Van Bone's A Martian Odyssey, which was published in 1934. Now, as far as its broader categories are concerned, friends, we have two typical jargons or terms over here, and those are apocalypse and post-apocalypse. These are the major themes or subgenres, rather we say, of science fiction. Friends, here we need to understand what does apocalypse means. It is related to the end of the entire world due to nuclear warfare, extraterrestrial invasion, cybernetic revolt, or any kind of disaster. On the other hand, post-apocalyptic science fiction set in a world or civilization after such any of the disaster or destruction. Friends, we have some examples of it where we can rightly mention the work of Mary Shelley, The Last Man, then Richard Matheson, I Am Legend, then George Stewart's Earth Abides. We have ballads The Dawn World and Burning World, or one more example of ballad, that is The Crystal World, which was published in 1966. After this, we have two typical settings of science fiction literature, and those are Utopia and Dystopia. These are the dominant settings which have rightly been used in science fiction literature, and the term called utopia is generally used to state an ideal, perfect society having an appropriate political, economical, and legal structures. The term comes from an ancient Greek, but at first the term was used by Thomas More in his book Utopia, which was published in 1516. As far as utopia or typical sound and positive structures in the society are concerned, we have one more example, and that's Aldous Huxley's Island, and it could be the perfect or other example of this setting called utopia. On the other hand, friends, when we talk about dystopia, it has exactly opposite features. It depicts or represents such society in which each and everything goes wrong or in fiasco. Destruction is there. Catastrophe is one of the prominent features of dystopian writing or such literature, and we have the examples of George Orwell's masterpiece 1984 and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. Friends, all these mentioned or discussed themes and ideas have been consistently using by the science fiction writers, and it can be categorized as the last part of this slide we have just discussed, utopia and dystopia. So it can be categorized into two different themes or settings as utopian structure or dystopian structure, even though they belong to the broad categorization of hard science fiction literature, soft science fiction literature, social science fiction literature, military science fiction literature, or some other subgenres of science fiction literature. So friends, after having seen all these things, we'll just talk about some popular examples of science fiction, and we have Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, then The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, then Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, then George Orwell's 1984, The Martian Chronicles by Bradbury, I, Robot by Isaac Asimov, Fahrenheit 451 by Bradbury again, Journey to the Center of the Earth by Jules Verne, a French science fiction writer, I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. We have Stranger in a Strange Land by Robert A. Heinlein, The Man in the High Castle by Philip K. Dick, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by again Philip K. Dick, The Stand by Stephen King, Neuromancer by William Gibson, as just we have discussed an example of Cyberpunk, The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, and The Last Policeman by Ben Yach Winters. Friends, here the list of these science fiction works is so long, but these are some of the popular examples for your information and understanding. Friends, after watching this presentation or video on science fiction, I am sure the concept of science fiction or the doubts about this term science fiction you had in your mind, it might have been clear. Friends, after watching this video, we rightly understand the relationship between science and literature, and we rightly recall the quote or statement stated by Isaac Asimov. Science fiction is the branch of literature which is concerned with the impact of scientific advancement upon human being, and this is what science fiction is all about. So friends, thanks for watching the video on science fiction, and I'm sure you might have understood what exactly science fiction is, what is its origin or what about its origin, what are the different definitions of science fiction, what are the different types, and some popular examples of science fiction. So friends, If you have liked the video, then I request you to like it. And once again, I request you to subscribe the channel, press the bell icon, and if you have liked it, then share it among your friends, near and dear ones. Friends, I ensure you that I'll definitely come up with different issues, different ideas, different elements and different aspects related to English language, literature, criticism, academics, motivation and many more. So friends, till then, just take care of yourself and be happy. Thank you.